Good evening and welcome to the Phoenixville Borough Council meeting for Tuesday, September 10th, 2019. We'll start the meeting with a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Crack, roll call, please.
Ms. Berkeley.
Present.
Mr. Dalton. Ms. Doherty. Here. Ms. Dugan.
Here.
Mr. Ewald. Here. Mr. Kirkner.
Here.
Mr. Soto.
Present.
Ms. Kowaleski.
Present.
Mayor Urschler.
Here.
Manager, Assistant, Police Chief, and Solicitor here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll move right into item 3, consider approval of the August 13, 2019 regular meeting minutes and September 3, 2019 special meeting minutes. What is council's pleasure?
Mr. President, I move that we approve minutes from both the August 13 and September 3 council meetings.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kirkner, second by Ms. Doherty. On the motion, any additions, corrections, comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We have no presentations this evening, so we will open up the first round of public participation. Any members of the public who wish to address council may do so at this time. You may do so from either podium. Please remember to sign in, and please remember to announce your name and whether or not you are a borough resident. And please keep comments to 5 minutes.
My name is Adam Deviney in Phoenixville. I'm currently the president of the Kiwanis Club of the Phoenixville area, and I apologize for reading, but I didn't want to miss some of these points. My purpose here this evening is to review and understand the fee schedule levied against our club of $1,025 to hold a traditional barbecue and community day October 5th between 8 and 3 in Reese Park, which our club has held in several forms over the last 20 years. Our club has been in existence and supported the community since September 15, 1925. All of the funds that are raised by Kiwanis and its partnerships are put back into the community to those children who need it to make it a better place for all. I realize council is trying to avoid precedents by giving consideration to one organization and not another for charging fees. However, no consideration was given to those activities that have been celebrated at the same time each year, utilizing the same venue and the same case, in some cases, for over 25 years. Specifically, the Kiwanis Community Day and Chicken Barbecue has been celebrated in Reese Park for over 25 years. And thanks to the borough not charging fees, all of the funds after expenses have gone directly back to the community. This year, our partner is the Barclay Home and School, and by this fee schedule you've presented to us, we will have to reduce their financial benefits at this event by over half, or approximately $500. Our club is very heavily involved with the community. I wanted to share some of the concerns about our annual calendar interfacing with the borough facilities where the potential for fees being charged exists. In early December, the Kiwanis Club decorates the gazebos of Reeves Park for Christmas at our own expense. Will fees be levied? Let us address the borough's Christmas parade. When the community was economically stressed, the borough could not sustain the annual Christmas parade and Santa Claus visit. They planned to stop the parade. Kiwanis stepped in through one of its members, many of you know Tom Mitchell. The club solicited funds for lighting down Bridge Street. Yes, that is our lighting that we gave to the borough. In addition, we supported and sustained the fund and funded the Christmas parade and Santa Claus from the club and donations from the community for over 15 years until last year when it became fashionable and visible again. The chamber and others joined in. This year we'll be celebrating the 28th annual Patriotic Celebration on May 29th. in Reeves Park, where we've celebrated the contributions made by our military and to those who made the ultimate sacrifice. How many of your children might have written a patriotic essay? Being a Marine Corps combat veteran, I'd really be upset if the borough charges fees for this event. Our annual duck race, how many of you have bought a duck ticket? We are seeking ways to keep it close to town and downtown area, which might involve borough resources. Will that incur fees? This year, the duck race raised $9,000, where half of it was shared by over 16 smaller community nonprofits. During the summer months, the Kiwanis Children's Plaza on Bridge Street is the home of Saturday morning for approximately 700 to 800 deserving children, with entertainment funded by Kiwanis. The club paid for well over half of the funds to build this facility and fountain. Will fees or rent creep in such that charges will be levied in the future? The icing on the cake, which really hit home, is the amount of time and effort that has gone into building of an all-inclusive playground to be built on the existing site of the current playground in Reeves Park, due to open November 13th. This 2-year funding program, consisting of the Kiwanis Club in partnership with the Phoenixville JCs and collaborating with the borough, raised over $510,000 to build this playground to promote physical, cognitive learning, visual, hearing experiences to enrich play for children and adults. We believe everyone deserves the highest level of fun. Finally, why wasn't consideration given to those activities that have been in the community mainstay, which have taken place in the borough, utilizing borough resources for years? Establish a grandfather provision, which would help to eliminate your concerns of precedence and be able to consider requests on a one-to-one basis. I've made Phoenixville my home and community for the past half century, and I've been proud of the community service provided by Kiwanis. I would hate to see the Phoenixville community and its spirit to be reduced to how many fees is the borough able to collect. Finally, if there's no relief of fees by the borough of the community on Community Day, then the Kiwanis Club will reduce profits and benefits to the Barclay Home and School Association for the children. The club would then like to modify its original request to the use of Reeves Park with the closure of Main Street between 2nd and 3rd and 3rd Avenue to B Street only. Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone's glasses up here. Thank you. My name is Noah Levine, and I'm here on behalf of my boss, U.S. Representative Chrissy Houlihan, whose district encompasses all of Chester County and Berks around Reading. This is a new district as of this cycle, the 116th Congress. It used to look something like a dragon, and now it's a little more compact and easy to understand. So at Chrissy's directive, we are visiting, as her staff, every district, or rather every municipality in her district, all 83 or so, to introduce ourselves and the services we can provide to you as a borough council and also to your constituents. I have sort of two titles in our organization where I handle Chrissy's schedule as district scheduler when she's back from DC, which is about 1 week a month. I think there's a common misconception that lawmakers are sort of on vacation when they're off from DC, and in fact, my job is to make Chrissy's days as full as possible when she's back home with meetings and roundtables and visits, all of that good stuff. And as constituent advocate, my second title, I conduct community outreach around the environment, immigration, infrastructure, and transportation, among a few other issue areas. We as an office are set up to assist our constituents, all 750,000 of them, more or less, with accessing federal services and benefits. In fact, we've returned almost $800,000 so far this year to constituents in the form of denied benefits. So please do contact us if you're having questions about the IRS, for example, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, any federal agency. We are prepared to advocate for you before. We can also help write letters of support for grant applications, for municipalities, for organizations, for companies. we have managed to, at this point, I think return about $3 million to the district in the form of grants. We've also closed about 500 cases. So again, we are a relatively small staff. We're 18 people between Pennsylvania and DC. So for us to know of issues as they concern Phoenixville or as they concern the community, please do tell us. At last Congress, there were 7,000 bills that passed through. So again, for any one issue that's important to you, for us to know about it and to prioritize it, please do tell us. You can contact us at our offices in Westchester, in downtown Westchester, or in downtown Reading, in Reading City Hall. Our office hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, with extended hours on Tuesday and Thursday. We're open 9 to 7. We also have a website, houlihan.house.gov, and all of our contact info is there as well. I would say finally that down in DC, Chrissy serves on a couple of different committees. She is part of the Armed Services Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, and the Small Business Committee. So she's well poised in those roles to advocate for Chester County in those different avenues. She also serves on a number of different caucuses, and caucuses are kind of like clubs in high school, where like-minded lawmakers will come together to advocate for issues of mutual importance. In Chrissy's case, she's part of the Service Women and Women Veterans Caucus, the Sustainable Energy and the Environment Caucus, and the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus, among a few others. She's introduced roughly 10 bills at this point in her term, and also about 3 amendments which have been passed, and co-sponsored 148 bills, which is to say that she has lent her name to those bills before they came to a floor for a final vote. So again, thank you for the time on the agenda this evening, and please do be in touch with us, especially for community events. Please send those invitations my way to make sure that we can get Chrissy out and about. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Kowaleski, members of council, Borough Manager, and Mayor David Sanick. I'm speaking regarding item 13B4 on the agenda, and I'm asking that Borough Council retain the mini storage warehouse use in the mixed-use growth areas. It's permitted now. I'm asking to let it remain in the mixed-use growth zoning district. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further public participation, we'll move on to communications and council participation. Mr. Soto.
2 things. One is at least regarding the comment that was made earlier with Kiwanis Community Day. Maybe this is something that we could put on the agenda for Parks and Rec to entertain as one of the borough events for the future that would lend itself to some conversation at committee, and if the committee feels like that's something that they want to put toward council, that would address that.
That's your committee.
So. Secondly, I guess maybe this is just in response to the transportation meeting. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, and even in the crowd tonight, I still see a lot of people representing the midget track. So I just wanted to, I guess, make a comment on. I know that I left that meeting really feeling like 2 things. Number one, that our constituents in the North Ward really don't really feel that this is coming down soon. This is happening at this meeting, as a matter of fact. That's why they're all here. They want to understand. And so I guess for one thing, I think that it at least sparked thought in my head that as we continue to progress, that topic, which even though it's not inherently on our agenda in the next few months, maybe even years, who knows, that we really think this through. I know that I don't think I can feel like without further investigation I can support something like a road that would impact our constituents. I certainly don't want them losing sleep over that over the next couple of years. So I urge this council, I know that Mr. Kirkner, I think, at least supports that thought as far as impact is concerned, not just the track, but obviously the safety of our residential neighborhoods. So let's just put that in the forefront of our heads as these months progress. And who knows, I may not even be here to do this, so this is my plea to future council members as well. So that's all.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, we'll move on to Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, and thank you all so much for being here this evening. It is always an honor to report on all the wonderful activities that we have going on in the Phoenixville community. Some of the previous activities that we've had over the past month, I just wanted to thank the Great American Brew Pub. They did have a Bag-O tournament over the course of 6 weeks, which I was able to host, and they have made a $1,000 donation to the All Accessibility Playground, which is being constructed in Reeves Park. So thank you to the Great American Brew Pub for that donation. On August 28th, the Phoenixville Police Association fundraiser benefiting the Shop with a Cop program, which helps individuals and children who may need a little bit of extra help over the holidays, had a great turnout at Root Down, and so thank you to all of those who participated in that. The month of September, we have proclaimed Phoenixville Goes Gold for childhood cancer awareness, and so tomorrow you will see gold ribbons on the light poles in the 100, 200, and 300 block of Bridge Street. And just as we're going through this, of course, it's a time to remember all of those young lives who have been impacted by childhood cancer. Specifically here in Phoenixville, we remember McKenna, Marin, and Gabby, 3 of Phoenixville's youngest residents who, unfortunately, we have lost to a childhood cancer over the past couple of years. September 7th, we had an incredible event at the Kimberton Firehouse called Bite for the Fight. It was its first year, and they brought in celebrity chef Robert Irvine, and so something to look at. I think they're going to do this event every year, and that was from the Fight on McKenna Foundation. And then another very exciting and first year for an event was September 8th, was the Clinic Adult Field Day, which benefited the clinic right on Church Street here in Phoenixville. So another event that I think and I hope will become a yearly event on our calendar, so check that out. It was a lot of fun. Upcoming events that we have on Thursday, September 12th, we have a Narcan training session. You can visit the police department's Facebook page to learn a little bit more about that. It will be from 7 to 8:30. And then on September 18th, in conjunction with the Drug and Alcohol Services in Chester County, we will have a Narcan distribution taking place here in Borough Hall. For those Phoenixville residents who live in Danielle Friel-Otten, our state representative district, she represents portions of Phoenixville. She and Senator Katie Muth will have a town hall on Thursday, September 12th at the East Pikeland Township Building. Saturday, September 14th is a busy day. We have a Halfway to St. Patrick's Day starting at 11 o'clock in the hosted by Molly McGuire's in the Main and Bridge Street parking lot. Also a shout out to Molly McGuire's for their recent golf outing, which benefited the Rebecca Melvin Foundation, and they donated over $9,000 to that foundation. The Time Bank, the Phoenixville Time Bank, which is another great nonprofit organization that we have here in the community, is hosting also on Saturday, September 14th, an Italian dinner and show. So the show is actually part of serving the dinner. I would highly suggest it. It will be very interesting, and that takes place at St. John Lutheran's Church. The Rebecca Melvin Foundation is having their annual fundraiser from 6 to 10 p.m. in the Kimberton Firehouse. And then on Sunday, September 15th, we are having Andre Thornton Day in Andre Thornton Park. Saturday, September 21st, Stable 12 will be hosting their cornhole tournament. Also, Holy Ghost Church will be hosting their pierogi festival, so lots of yummy pierogies. They make tens of thousands of pierogies, so I would suggest everyone check it out. They have lots of great flavors. And then there will be a community citizens advocacy spaghetti dinner at Bethel Baptist. And the Colonial Theater is also hosting on Saturday, September 21st, a Downton Abbey champagne reception. I will actually be hosting that on their behalf on Saturday, September 21st to celebrate the movie Downton Abbey being released. On Saturday, October 5th, the Phoenixville Women's Outreach will be having a bingo in Kimberton Firehouse. And then on Sunday, October 6th, United Nations Day of Peace celebration and concert will take place at St. John's Lutheran. Also, we would like to take this opportunity to wish Lou Beccaria a very happy retirement. Lou retired this past month from the Phoenixville Community Health Foundation after many years of excellent service to the community and to the Health Foundation. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you all for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of good things coming up, it sounds like. Moving on with the agenda, item 8, appointments and public resolutions. So I have the distinct pleasure of saying that for the first time ever, at least as far as I've been on council, I have no openings to report on any of the various boards and commissions, which is awesome. That means that we have a lot of citizens that are engaged in those boards and commissions. But that doesn't mean that next month or the month after there might not be an opening. So always, if you have any interest, make sure you're reaching out to either the members of council or to staff to get the applications for those boards and commissions. With that, we will move on to new business. And we have to consider the approval of as-built plans for 20 High Street as requested by Inland Design. Seeing no motion, maybe we can get a little background on this first and then.
Sure. I don't have exactly when the plans were approved, but a lot of times we get plans that come in and they have garages identified, but they're usually market drives whether or not the garages are going to be built or how they're going to be built, et cetera. And in this case, I think there was some confusion with the developer and the contractor versus what was shown on the plans. What was shown on the plans, the original plans that you approved, and the PC recommended approval, showed the location of the 4 parking garages for those 4 units. That's not what happened. The contractor, whether it was market-driven conditions or whatever that may be, actually did not build the detached garages, but instead made the parking area available to meet the parking demand that was required in the plans. They asked us to look past that, and rightfully so. The zoning officer and the borough engineer and staff said, that's not our, we can't do that. Only council can do that. The other option would be for them to come back before the planning commission, go through the process, try to get those plans modified in that way. I believe this to be the better way to do it. I don't believe staff has an issue one way or the other. There's the biggest issue for us is the parking, whether or not it's a garage or whether or not it's paving. I don't think really matters to staff other than getting cars off of the street. So our recommendation is that you approve the as-built, which would then alleviate the burden on the builder to build the parking garages. So that's what this is about.
Thank you, Mr. Craig.
I'll make a motion to approve the as-built plans for 20 High Street as requested by Inland Design.
Second.
Just a question on this. So what the contractor has actually built is just paved parking?
Yes.
So it is still off-street parking in the locations of where the garages were meant to be, but just not garages?
Correct.
Okay.
Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. All right. The next item is resolutions. We have none. We have hearings. We have a conditional use hearing, but it was advertised to begin at 7:30, so we can't start it until 7:30. So we will come back to that. And so we don't waste time, we will jump right into reports of committees, boards, and commissions. Mr. Ewald, Planning Commission?
Just a question on the agenda. The next item will likely be longer than 4 minutes. Do we need to start the hearing at 7:30 or?
Yes. So. Okay. Point well taken. Well, we will defer item 12A until after the conditional use hearing. We will move down to 12B.
Okay, this one actually will work in that time frame.
Great.
All right, I'll make a motion. I'm going to bundle 1, 3, and 4. I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the sign request at 17 South Main Street as recommended 4.0 in the HARB action memo of September 4th, 2019. That's going to be Three Brothers Grill. 3 is to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the sign request for 223 Prospect Street as recommended 4.0 in the HARB action memo of September 4th, 2019. That's Teresa Haig Art Gallery. And also to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the signage request for 425 Bridge Street as recommended 4.0 in the HARB action memo of September 4th, 2019. That's Uncle B's.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Kirkner. On the motion. Yes, you will need to, from all, yes. Any other, Mr. Kirkner?
I just want to add a comment that you may appreciate later on, but the item 4, that's probably like the coolest sign, one of the coolest signs I've ever seen come out of HARB. So, and in a minute, you may understand why I said that. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments on that, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 701. It is approved.
And lastly, I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the sign request for 131 Bridge Street as recommended 4.0 in the HARB action memo of September 4th, 2019. That is the sign for Phoenix Village.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Ms. Berkeley. On the motion.
Yes, on the motion, Mr. President. I'm so sorry. I feel compelled to say something about this, and I spoke with Ms. Dugan earlier. I'm the reason this has been split out. This sign, plain black block letters on a white background, is about, now I just talked about the coolest sign I've probably ever seen come out of HARB. This is probably the most blasé sign I've ever seen. And I thought this was the kind of thing that our HARB sign requirements were supposed to avoid, but here we are with it. And but I mean, plain black block letters on a white background, that's not very imaginative to me. Thank you.
You know what, I'll just throw it out there. It's kind of one of those things with the HARB where we have a certain thing that we approve and deny according to the rules. And if it doesn't break any of the rules, we don't get to decide what their choices of style or anything are. So unfortunately, that would make it through HARB because of that.
Mr. Soto.
I'm just curious, Mr. Kirkner, what did you think of the sign that's attached to the side of the building, which is a little bit more color, I guess? There are 3 colors.
Yeah, not that it matters, but yeah, I thought that had a little more oomph to it, to use a technical term. But I mean, this sign is going to be on the front of the building, rather prominent, so.
Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Myself, so this one passes 701. All right, looks like we have spent the sufficient amount of time to go back and pick up with item 11A. Conditional use hearing. It's been a while since we've had one, but I believe the procedure is we will need a motion to open the conditional use hearing from council. Motion to open by Mr. Dalton, second by Mr. Kirkner. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. The conditional use hearing is now open. I'll turn it over to the solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you've indicated, this is a hearing on the application of Petra Community Housing The applicant is the owner of property which is located at 1005 and 1007 Paradise Street in the borough. The property is located in an RI residential infill zoning district. The property is improved with 2 existing single-family dwellings. The applicant is proposing to utilize the property as a personal care home, which as an institutional use is a permitted use in the zoning district by conditional use. Just to give the audience and council some background and reminder about what a conditional use is, this hearing is somewhat different than the typical hearings Borough Council would have for ordinance enactment. In this case, Borough Council actually sits as a judicial body. In that capacity, they will hear evidence, testimony, exhibits. There's a court reporter here that's taking a record of the proceeding. So in this particular case, Borough Council actually functions more like a zoning hearing board. Conditional use is just that. It's a use proceeding sounding in zoning. The role of Borough Council in the proceeding is to weigh the evidence to determine whether or not the applicant has satisfied the burden in the ordinance that would allow a conditional use. Conditional use is not like a variance where you're changing or varying what the ordinance says. In fact, your ordinance by legislation says this type of use is one that you contemplate in the district so long as the conditions are satisfied. Having a conditional use does not eliminate the applicant's burden or ability to have to satisfy all other requirements in the borough with respect to the property, with respect to how it functions. This merely approves the use of the property, and so there may be other requirements that have to go forward after the conditional use if you decide to grant the approval. Just for ground rules, since it is a public hearing, the applicant will go first. The applicant's here this evening. They will provide information to council. After the witnesses are done, council may have questions for the witnesses. Members of the audience are also allowed to ask questions of the witness as well. After the applicant has completed its case and rested, if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to address Borough Council, specifically concerning the conditional use, you'll be given the opportunity to be sworn in and provide testimony to council if you desire to do that. Under the rules, Borough Council has up to 45 days from the end of the testimony to render a decision on the conditional use. Mr. Cambick, I know you're here for the applicant this evening. And before I turn it over to you, there are just a few council exhibits that I would like to mark for the record. Council Exhibit 1 is the application which was received by the borough. It was received August 1st, 2019. There's 3 pages that are pre-printed, and then there are 4 pages that are attached narrative. That document will be Council Exhibit 1. Council Exhibit 2 is a proof of publication indicating that this hearing this evening was advertised in the Mercury on August 24th and August 31st. Council Exhibit 3 is an affidavit of mailing which was signed by your borough manager. Mr. Crack indicates in the affidavit that on August 20th, 2019, he mailed notice of the hearing to adjacent property owners. And finally, Council Exhibit 4 is an affidavit of posting. It's also been signed by your manager, indicating that he posted the property with notice of the hearing on August 22nd. The advertisement, the mailing, as well as the posting are all requirements in your ordinance for a conditional use proceeding. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to the applicant. And Mr. Cambick, before you get started, we would have the court reporter swear you in. Okay?
Steve Cambick, K-A-M-B-I-C. I do. Good evening, Mayor, Council President, Borough Council. My name is Steve Cambick, Executive Director of Petra Community Housing. I'm here with Pat Bakovitz, Director of Department of Community Development, Chester County. With the assistance of Chester County, Phoenixville Homes purchased this property to continue the use that had previously existed at this facility. It is two buildings attached by a common firewall, 1005 and 1007 Paradise Street. It was used previously, and the proposal is to continue to use it as a drug rehabilitation setting. All services are provided off-site. There are no drug rehabilitation services provided. This is strictly a residential facility. The major renovation proposed is only to 1007 Paradise Street, which is to modify it so that a house manager can live in the facility. That person does not provide direct services. That person is there for security and related support to the residents of that building because services are provided off-site. The house manager is to have an associate's or similar degree in sociology, psychology, or such. Chester County Department of Human Services will select the agency that will be staffing and operating the facility. Petra Community Housing serves as the owner, developer, and landlord. We at Petra Community Housing, we are not supervising it directly. That is the agency that the county will retain for that purposes based on a request for proposals. The county will ensure and monitor that all compliance is done according to a facility at that type operating in the state of Pennsylvania. The residential character of that property and that setting will stay as is. No signage is proposed in front, so it would look same as it looks today, same use as it has had before. The only major difference is creating a dwelling space for the house manager. That's the essence of what we are proposing. Pat, do you wish to have any additional?
Pat Markovitz. Just like to say hello to Mayor and Borough Council, and I'm question.
Does anyone on council have any questions for either gentleman?
You mentioned previously this was used for the same use?
Yes.
How long was
Correct.
it, how long was it used under that use? How long has it
A
not
matter of
been?
years. I don't know the exact number of years. Pat, do you have some idea?
Roughly?
Approximately 10
Okay.
15, is my understanding.
And is it currently being used for that?
Again, it's my understanding, you can confirm this, Steve, but it's been vacant for a number of years.
Okay.
So Petra Community Housing, the owner, is waiting for approval to proceed as proposed.
Mr. Cambick, you mentioned that the county is going to monitor the facility. Could you
Yes.
explain what that means, what that entails?
The county is going to retain the services of a facility that will essentially manage the residential property. They are going to find a qualified agency and then hire this house manager. They are going to have to make sure that the facility is operated correctly according to all county and state rules.
Is there any other questions the council has? I'm sorry.
So I'm just looking at the application. So how many people would be there? How many residents would be there?
It'd be the same as before. You have 7 bedrooms per property, 2 properties, total of 14.
And would they each have a house manager, or is it going to be?
No, one house manager for both. There is a connecting porch with overhang across the back of the property, so you can go out the back door of one into the back door of the other. There'd be one common kitchen for the residents within the 2 buildings. So the 2 separate properties, because they are separate, would essentially operate as one.
Okay. And so is this like a secure location, or do people come and go freely?
People can come and go freely. They're expected to use mass transit to get to work, et cetera. And they're expected to be a good neighbor, to operate as a residential location.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the front? Mr. Kirkner?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Mr. Camrick, you're asking for 7 unrelated persons, permission for 7 unrelated persons at 1007 Paradise Street. Does that include the house manager?
Yes, the house manager would be unrelated. The house manager would be selected by the county as an employee of the agency which is providing oversight.
So it would be that the house manager plus 6 client residents?
That is correct.
Okay. And also, with regard to capacity of the road system, the application says that the residents of the facility will be limited to 4 persons using a personal vehicle, including the house manager. Does that mean 3 vehicles beside the house manager?
That means 3 vehicles and the house manager, total 4. There are
Right.
4 off-street parking spaces today, and the occupants, as they're selected and permitted to go there, have to have this understanding. We're not looking to create any additional demands on off-street parking.
Right. And so will the county agency that places these people screen them for the limited number of vehicles? Or, I mean, how is that going to work? How are you going to limit that to 3 vehicles for the clients?
I don't know if there's going to be carpooling or what the exact, but this is the arrangement that we are informing the county that seems appropriate to that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else from the front? No other questions from the front. Is there anyone in the audience that has any questions for either of the witnesses that testified? Sir, could you approach the microphone, please? Did someone raising their hand? Sir, could you just come up and to the microphone, please? State your name and address, and you can ask your question.
Good evening, Mayor and other council members. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm Vijay Pitambram. Vijay, that is the first name, last name Pitambram, Peethambram.
Okay, sir, if you'd keep your voice up so we can hear your question.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the owner of one of the owners of 1009 Paradise Street. So I believe, this is 3-bedroom house. There are 2 units. So basically, it's supposed to be 6 unrelated people would be living in that. But in this case, we are doubling the usage. And the currently property is vacant for a number of years. So currently the property is vacant for a number of years. Now we are trying to renew the conditional usage after a number of years. Then I believe it's right thing to do to make sure it is the right usage for the property and for the location. So I would like to oppose the usage of the community housing for this location.
Well, sir, we're going to give you an opportunity to testify. This is time for questions. You have questions for what either gentleman said tonight? Because you'll have an ability to testify in a few moments, okay?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Okay, just questions right now. Anybody else have any questions? Sir?
Good evening, Brian Moore. I live 130 Westridge Place, Phoenixville. I'm sorry, Westridge Place, Phoenixville. Questions for Petra. The previous activity, the residency, when was it stopped and why? Can you explain?
Petra Community Housing purchased it in August of 2018. I don't know all the circumstances as to why the former owner no longer is present. Pat, can you add anything?
I really can't. No, I don't have the context for why the service stopped.
Just to clarify, it was a group home for the similar purpose as is currently being requested at conditional use. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay. When you say that it will be operated by an agency governed by county and state rules, can Department of Community Services kind of explain what rules govern the operation of such group homes in summary?
Chester County Human Services and the Drug and Alcohol Departments will maintain oversight of the resident admissions process and evaluate continued compliance. They're selecting the vendor based on a request for proposals. So they're going to look for the most qualified vendor to do that. Consistent with two different departments within the county. Regular monitoring visits will occur by county officials on site to ensure ongoing compliance with state and federal laws, including for recovery house guidelines. These recovery house licensing standards are periodically updated by the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs and the Department of Licensing, State of Pennsylvania.
Can the borough speak to whether there's any similar facilities governed by the same regulations currently active in the borough?
Well, Mr. Moore, I'm not sure that's a proper time in the proceeding to deal with that. You certainly can have the right to answer, make that comment during your testimony, okay?
All right, and then the similar question, I wondered if the borough had any regulations, so I'll make some comments about that, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else has any questions for either witness? It appears not. You have anything else to offer for us, Mr. Kamick?
Petra Community Housing, I believe, has shown its ability to be a good neighbor, to comply with ordinance of the borough, to work closely with borough agencies, and to overcome whatever obstacles may exist to provide quality, affordable housing. Petra Community Housing is willing, happy to partner with the county to provide services for persons trying to recover from serious substance abuse. I believe facilities like this are needed in our society. And I believe the location that exists and the long history at that location merits consideration and approval.
Okay, thank you. We've reached a point in the proceeding, if anyone wishes to actually address Borough Council with testimony or comments, now would be the time. I know the two gentlemen that spoke previously. Do you gentlemen wish to say anything to Borough Council? Yes, sir. Sir, before you get started, we're going to ask the court reporter to put you under oath, okay?
Sure. Vijay Pitambaram. Yes. PEETHAMBARAM. P as in Peter, E as in P as in PRAM, RAM.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah, the point I was trying to make is because this community was vacant for a number of times, and at this time, I don't know whether the council knows what the reason was. The earlier the unit was closed, not used for the same purpose. So, so now because we are trying to use it, so it is good to get the opinion of the people, the neighbors who are going to live in that community, to make sure everybody is comfortable and okay with the usage. So with that said, I do own the neighbor house, and the other people who are neighboring to that other side of the house, we did talk to them, and they are also opposing, but I am not sure whether they are in the audience today or not. So, I believe the Petra community will be abide by the rules, but what like landlord and tenant. Landlord may abide by the rules, but the tenant not sure whether they will go by the rules or not at the when they use the property, like how they intend to use. So because this is one point I was trying to make earlier was, this is 3-bedroom house and there are 2 units together. So by the township rules, only 3 unrelated people can live in that house. But in this case, we are trying to double it up. So it's basically 14 people are going to live in this house, where it's initially supposed to be 6. So that is one thing, that variance we are seeing it. And so, when this community is being used as a community house, and we are trying to employ a new manager to oversee the usage, I believe that may be one of the reasons was they're not able to control the people. And either the tenants are not abide by the rules of the community or the township. That could be one of the reason, or other use is to improve the facilities that they're going to provide on site. But whatever the reason is, I oppose. One is being because it is not used for a long time. Now it's time to take the opinion of the neighbors around the community to see whether that is appropriate usage or not. So we would like to oppose the usage.
Okay, thank you. So in the hearing in this nature, if you put yourself out to testify, you are subject to questions. Is there any questions the council has of the gentleman? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Brian Moore, Brian Moore. I do. Just 2 basic comments for the Borough Council. I would ask that the council investigate whether there are similar facilities in the borough and how they are operated, under what guidelines. And I'm also interested as to whether the borough has established anything by virtue of ordinance that governs the use of group homes like this. I do concur with the Petra Housing representative that these facilities are necessary. They need to be located in facilities with close access to towns, to public transportation and so forth. But it's important, I think, for us to understand what the Borough Council and what the borough's regulations already accrue. And if not, then it might be something that the borough has to consider as to whether it has regulations around such group homes. Those are my 2 comments.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mr. Moore. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Moore? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to address Borough Council on this topic? It would appear not. Just give one more chance before we close the hearing. Any other questions from council or any comments from council before the hearing closes from an evidentiary standard?
Am I able to ask questions of the applicant still?
Sure.
All right, going back to the actual units of 1005 and 1007, what is the actual square footage of the structures? I mean, roughly, not to the... And how much of that space would be shared space as opposed to just living space. The only,
I have a drawing that was provided, I'm going to guess somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,200 square feet per building. I don't know the answer to that question. Each occupant has their own bedroom, but then they share a common living room, a common kitchen area.
and there's a living room in each building, or is there one
Yes,
shared living room?
Yes, there's a living room in 1005 with a small seating area, but the main kitchen area is in 1007. We're talking post renovation, not what exists today.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, unless council has anything up, Mr. Kirkner?
Yes, I have another question with regard to the kitchen area. You said the main kitchen area will be in 1007?
Yes.
And the plan I'm looking at here for, I guess it's for 1005, the kitchen in 1005 would be converted to a bedroom?
No, it's just a small seating area, so forth. It's not a full use kitchen. The idea is we want to create a congregate area where people can sit and eat,
Relocate.
socialize, and yeah, I think you're right. Yes, we're trying to create as much as a good transitional residential setting to try to help people get back into productive society.
I'm just looking at the plan here, and it says convert to bedroom.
The convert to bedroom is where the live-in house manager would be.
Okay, so that's in 1007?
7.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right. All right, thank you.
I mean, the only plan that we have is the one that's in your hand. So I'm not
Correct.
sure, are there other construction plans that we're supposed to be able to,
That's the only plan that we have.
I guess more would be submitted at some point?
Whatever is required by planning and zoning and building department.
Yeah, building construction plans will be required for building permits. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, and I guess, so we're being asked to approve the conditional use to change the ratio of to allow more than normal.
No,
What are we being asked to do exactly?
You're being asked to allow this property to be used as a personal care home, which is an institutional use, which is permitted in the RI district. There is no request in front of you, nor do you have the ability to vary any provision of your zoning ordinance. Your zoning officer has made the determination that what is proposed is a permitted conditional use. So there are no issues that I'm aware of, or the zoning officer has made council aware of, that there are zoning issues associated with this. So we're not talking about numbers of people or bedrooms or sizes of anything. We're just talking about the use as a personal care home. And that's the only thing that's in front of council this evening.
Sorry, just one more question. So this is, personal care home seems very broad, but what you're saying is that a drug recovery transition house is a personal care home?
Care home and an institutional use that your zoning officer believes is a permitted conditional use in this district if the standards are satisfied. Okay? So if there's nothing else, then, I'm sorry?
Yeah,
Mr. Kerwin?
I did want to add that as a conditional use, we can place conditions.
Yes,
on
sir.
this.
You can.
Within reason.
Within reason that are related to the request, certainly, sir.
But I wanted to ask Mr. Cambrick again, with regard to the kitchen in one property, how would people move from the property without the kitchen into the property with the kitchen? They'd have to go outside?
Yes, they have to go outside. You see the bottom of the diagram, the slats, that's the roof overhang. So
Right.
you don't have to go outside the front door if you didn't want to. You could go outside the back. It's a covered walkway essentially to go from one property to the other property.
So essentially, one property is not going to have a kitchen.
Yes, it's going to have just a sitting area, living room. And the other property has the kitchen area.
Thank you.
With the, with this type of structure, I mean, understanding that somebody else would be managing, I guess, are there hours of operation? Are there curfews?
The county, in its request for proposal, is clarifying all that to the vendors that respond. When Petra officials first looked through the property, we did this with several members of Chester County and social services, mental health, etc. And this is the layout that they suggested to have as effective a facility as possible. So that, yes, would include hours and so forth, but it's a residential facility. If they put curfew or other limits, that's what they're going to do. Our responsibility is as a landlord, and we expect our tenant, which will be a vendor selected by the county, will maintain good standards.
I have another question about this kitchen thing. What's the feasibility of knocking a hole in that wall to provide indoor access between units to the kitchen?
That would compromise the firewall. Right now, you have essentially a party wall because it begins at ground level in the basement and goes through the roof, becoming a parapet wall above the roof line. So you have total independent fire resistant structure. You penetrate that with a door of any kind, you're going to compromise that wall. That would definitely create building and zoning concerns, and so we decided just leave it just like it is.
Will there be any additional bathrooms? Is this, it looks like from the 1.5 bathrooms per unit currently, or is that not currently accurate?
These are the, there will be a bathroom in the, it's not shown in the manager dwelling area, and then 2 additional bathrooms within the buildings for the residents.
So how many total?
3. Again, this is the design that the county suggested that we renovate to.
I guess from other examples of this around the county, is there a normal square footage ratio for people versus living space versus shared space?
I'm sorry, I'm not a...
Oh, Pat's behind you.
I'm really not an expert in that.
Well, I think that's where the licensing comes into play. Obviously, there is, I can't speak to the specifics of what that ratio is, but certainly as Steve said, the county's Department of Human Services and Drug and Alcohol have been part of this design from the beginning and have looked at all the specifications to make sure that it is compliant with what their requirements are.
Okay.
And I would just add, should Borough Council decide to grant the conditional use, it would certainly recommend certain conditions be imposed, and obviously they would have to satisfy any and all state and county requirements with respect to the operation of the facility if we get to that point. Is there any other questions or comments from the front? If not, I would recommend, given the information that was received tonight, council does have 45 days in which to render a decision, not make a decision in haste, and you can table this or place this on your next agenda for further discussion and action. And I would close the evidentiary part of the hearing and turn it over to council to make a motion to close the hearing then, unless there are questions.
I move we close the hearing.
Motion by Mr. Kirkner, second by Mr. Ewald to close the hearing. On that motion, seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. With that said, seeing nothing coming from the floor, I will ask Mr. Crack to have this on our agenda for the October meeting. Thank you. All right. With that, we are back to item 12A, Planning Commission. What is council's pleasure? Do we want to, well, I'll let council speak for themselves.
In order to start conversation tonight, I will make a motion to approve the final subdivision and land development plan known as French Creek West as recommended 5-0 by Planning Commission in their action memo of August 19th. There is a lengthy action memo that, if you bear with me, I do think should be, well, I can circle back under comments as to the sections that I think need to be read aloud.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Ewald, second by Ms. Berkeley. On the motion, Ms. Dugan.
Okay, I'll go first. I have been looking into this. I looked back through my notes, and the original plan for this, I believe, went through March of 16, if I found that correctly. And we had a lot of discussion about, you know, the things that they look like that they have attempted to do. Now, during that time, it's been 3.5 years, and I have seen what's happened as far as we have approved these huge development places. Now, I'm looking at the borough website and tells me there are 550 units that are planning on being there. Is that correct still, Mr. Crack?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, if we have 550 units in this area, that's double the number of cars. So that's about 1,000 cars that are going to be on the road driving to get to and from work. Now, I understand that we started this years ago. We were recovering from where we were before. We've redeveloped this town. It looks fantastic, and so many people want to move here. And now we have built a lot of these dwellings that are a lot of renters, and a lot of traffic. We think we have a parking problem right now. If we add another 1,000 to that area on driving to and from work, well, we've solved our parking problem because basically everybody's going to be parked on the streets. This is going to be impossible to get through. I cannot support any more of these big developments, these multifamily, these big residences anymore at all. I can't approve anything on this one because I've seen what's happening. Now we have another phase of another development that now they, you know, I mean, originally we had a plan out there that we're going to have the Northern Relief Route, and now we were thinking, yeah, that might not be such a good idea because we have to plow through a development. You know, this is like not a good idea anymore with this. I'm happy that we've got so many people that want to move here and build here and everything, but we got to start thinking about maybe looking at the zoning, and maybe we can't allow any of these anymore because we don't have the streets, we don't have the capacity, we don't have, I mean, if we end up doing this, yeah, we might get a little bit of extra in taxes, but think about what we're going to have to do before then in order to accommodate these people. This is more officers, this is more, we have a fire department that, they're covering a lot of people. We would have to hire more people to accommodate this, and there you go with the taxes. I mean, this is just getting out of control right now. We have to take a pause on all of these huge developments that people are trying to put here, and I can't possibly support another one. Thank you.
Mr. Soto?
I said it 4 years ago, I'll say it again, I don't like this plan. Never liked it from the draft when it was just a napkin sketch. This is, the fact that it's coming to us in phases just gives me PTSD of Fillmore Village. And if any members of Fillmore Village are in the audience, I'm sure they can appreciate that. I can't imagine what kind of burden this is going to be over the next couple of years, but, with regard to traffic, I think Ms. Dugan, covered all of that. One of the biggest things that I mentioned before was the fact that there is still yet no feature to introduce any kind of other kind of tax rateables. Mr. Kirkner has said it several times as well. We cannot keep putting the tax burden on residential units. There has to be a better way of doing this. With that, I don't feel like there's a good grasp of what these phases really will look like. I think there's a nice high-level overview, but this phase scares me, quite frankly, and I will not be supporting this.
Mr. Kirkner?
Yes, Mr. President. Would it be appropriate at this time to ask questions of the applicant with regard to items that are in the resolution? May I
Absolutely.
do so?
I believe the applicant is here and can address council.
Good evening. I'm Christy Flynn with Rockwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Ms. Rothwell. I have a few questions, looks like 5 or 6, with regard to specific items in the resolution. Item N, that's about the permits, all required outside agency permits, approval from DEP, Army Corps of Engineers, and NPDES permit, whatever that alphabet soup stands for. Are those permits in hand at this point?
All outside permits, with the exception of the NPDES, which is the stormwater permit, are currently in hand. And the NPDES permit, as you may appreciate, is a complicated permit because of proximity, generally stormwater environment, as well as proximity in the borough, as well as the environmental concerns on the property. But we have navigated through that. The conservation, that's a two-step process. The Conservation District has recommended approval, and it's in processing at the DEP. It's just in the administrative, it's been approved by their review, and it's an administrative process, so we expect a letter at any day.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to item O, right under that, the applicant's acknowledgement and consent that areas identified as Phase 3, 5, and 6 are being granted preliminary approval at this time. So I think it needs to be clear that if council approves this, that's also includes preliminary approval for these 3 phases as well, which includes preliminary approval for the apartment complex. Am I reading that correctly? I mean, that wording befuddled me a little bit, so.
That's correct, yes. That's what this proposal includes.
Okay. And item S, as in Sam, that's about construction of the parking lot, as shown on Phase 4. Does the applicant control title to this property at this point?
No, we are not the contract purchaser of the parking lot. But we, through our agreement to purchase, the seller of the property that we are purchasing owns that property, and they are obligated to not only sign this resolution as owner of the property, but to build that parking lot.
And how are they obligated? What's on paper that obligates
They authorized
them?
us as their applicant, and they signed all of the applications to include that parking lot. They have reviewed this resolution as well and have indicated their acceptance of the resolution. And if you'll notice, your solicitor has their signature block on this resolution, so they will sign it accepting that responsibility on their parcel.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to item Z, sort of the same thing. That's parcels 15-8-10 and 15-9-98. Again, does the applicant control title?
We do not control title. It's the same answer. So it's the same current owner, same title owner, signature block on this resolution. It's the same answer.
Okay. Then under waivers, waiver I, allow construction activities within a floodplain. Representing the north side of Phoenixville, we've dealt with a lot of water issues in homes there. And I just, well, let me get to my question here. Will the townhouses have basements?
No.
Okay. No basements. Will owners be expected to purchase flood insurance?
No, I can do a quick sort of layman's explanation of the floodplain situation. I really don't want to bog you down on a very complicated item. But essentially, the current state of the site is that the majority of the site is currently in the floodplain. However, the engineers have identified the reason that the floodplain spreads across our site is because there are 2 bridges located on the creek in our area that are blocking the water and spreading it up onto the site. By removing those bridges, we take out that bottleneck, and the floodplain, not only on our side of the creek, but also on the other side of the creek on other properties, comes down. The elevation is actually, it relocates the floodplain closer to the channel of the creek and brings this property out of the floodplain. So what we have in hand right now is what's called a conditional letter of map revision, and you guys are well versed in flood FEMA talk, so I know that you may have heard that before, but that means that FEMA has reviewed in great detail the studies that our engineers have done, and they agree that if the work that we say we will do is done, this piece of the property will no longer be in the floodplain. The new floodplain line will move. So currently, the floodplain still is across the whole property, which is why we need that waiver, because we are going to be working in what is technically a floodplain. After the work is done, it can be resurveyed, and that information is then provided to FEMA, and at that point, they change the official map rather than a conditional letter, with a letter of map revision, a LOMAR instead of the CLOMAR, and at that point, then the flood insurance is no longer required for properties in that area because the map has been changed. Did I?
Yeah, and I've heard that before about removing the bridges. Alleviates that issue, but you probably look around here and see I'm one of the few people old enough to remember 1972 in Agnes, and I know the problem there was water backing up from the Schuylkill into that property, not coming down from northern Chester County.
And I should have, I
French Creek.
apologize if I can jump back into my explanation.
Right.
In addition to pulling out those bridges, the site has to be raised. So the site will be raised, but even filling in that area that was previously floodplain, because the bridges are no longer there creating that backup, the water stays in a smaller area. So the site is going to be higher than it is today. So that's part of the change to the floodplain as well.
Okay. But you said FEMA is going to resurvey that after the work is done?
We survey it and submit it to FEMA, and FEMA approves and says that that meets what we had. So we sent them prospective plans. This is what we intend to do. They said, if you do that, then you'll be outside of the floodplain. Once we send them the survey that shows that we have actually done the work, then they do the letter of map revision.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other, excuse me, any other comments or questions from council, particularly for the applicant?
Well, just a question for the manager in terms of where we stand on timelines and whatnot for this permit approval.
I'm actually looking for that right at the moment because I'm trying to ascertain the document that I last had doesn't have that in the packet. So I'm looking at Christie and looking at you, trying to figure out which, I know we have an extension. I don't remember if it's through tonight or through October.
It would have been through tonight.
That's what I thought. So that's your answer.
Mr. Kirkner.
Mr. President, now that I asked my questions, I would like to make my comments. I've been around this project since forever, back in the 90s, here come the old guy stories again. But back in the 90s, I was on council that approved the first comprehensive plan for French Creek West. And I voted against it at the time because I didn't feel as though it had enough industrial use in it. Now, this is 1998. Now, obviously, the economy has changed since then, but with the rezoning in 2013, we did away with what was called the overlay plan for that and came up with the mixed-use zoning. But the concept from the beginning was not townhouses. I mean, when this whole thing started with the Steele property, the first two components were the building that is Customers First Bank down here on Bridge Street and the townhouses up on Vanderslice Street. And the thinking was at the time that council was very reluctant to approve those townhouses, but did so with the understanding that those townhouses would leverage the development of the commercial component of French Creek West. Well, that never happened. The economy went through several gyrations, a recession back in 2001, a huge recession back in 2008, and I understand today that, and I see what's happened over in my home township of East Whiteland with the Brian O'Neill property there, former Worthington Steel National Rolling Mills, and now it's becoming apartments, but there's also a commercial component to that there as well. And my thinking always was that mixed use meant some commercial, and as Mr. Soto referenced earlier, we do need commercial tax ratables. I'm not saying close the door on residential, but to make it almost exclusively residential, I don't think is the appropriate path. And certainly, that's not what this community has envisioned over the long haul with regard to this parcel. And, I talk to a lot of people in this town, even people who live in fairly recent townhome developments, and they say to me, we have enough townhomes, enough with the townhomes. But that on itself is not reason enough to vote against this. But the lack of mix, I should say, on this use, it's just not enough of a mix for me. And I think that putting 500 some new residences in this community, with traffic issues that Ms. Dugan referred to as well, I think the community expects better of us with this parcel, with French Creek West. Certainly with, the loss of the steel company there many years ago, but still, there is an expectation that we get something that creates jobs there. And I don't see that with this mix here. Thank you.
Ms. Doherty?
I'll keep it brief because so many people have already said what I've been thinking. I just want to add that I also have a lot of trouble doing this to Paradise Street. Like, you know, Paradise Street is already busy. We've got lots of people over there. We have the 2 residences for seniors. And now part of this project is we're going to have more people accessing Nut Road from Paradise Street, and there is, because we don't own the road, we can't, we have limited ability to control how we control traffic. I mean, my understanding is it's really in PennDOT's hands. So, that is a problem for me, and I completely agree that the lack of anything else makes us in danger of being a bedroom community. I mean, if you want to build townhouses where all you're going to do is let people come and go from work, then, go to Douglasville. I mean, it's a little bit different than what we're hoping to envision, which is a more walkable community. And even the people that live in the existing developments, in the existing homes there, I mean, if they had a cafe, if they had something that could bring people together in that area, I think there might be more of an appeal. But it's a lot of units, so that's my concern.
I know a lot's been said, and I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but I don't know, it's been 4 years. I've been beating this drum for a long time about this particular project. I mean, I think it's clear that at least a couple of council members have expressed the same concerns. We can't let our residents take the burden for this, and I guess, last time when this was presented as a preliminary plan, I heard things like, we can't move the commercial space that people work from home now. And I keep thinking, well, then why do we have such a traffic problem in the morning and the afternoon? That just doesn't universally apply. I mean, there is a need. We do have a need to fill. And this is, I don't know what the percentage fully of square acreage this is for the borough, but it's pretty high up there. This is no insignificant project. This is not Phoenix Village. This is not Riverworks. I'd argue this is bigger. This is, in the floodplain. It requires a lot of remediation like those other projects do as well. But this is different. And I can't support it.
If I could, I think that we've been working extensively with your planning commission for years, as you mentioned. It is true that the environment for industrial, office, even retail has changed significantly in the last 4 and 5 years. That has definitely happened, and we can all see that is true. In terms of burden that this community would place, there's a couple of points to that. We presented a fiscal impact study to your planning commission that showed a large net positive benefit in terms of tax revenue to the borough above and beyond costs, as well as the school district and the county, above and beyond costs incurred by the creation of the community. And on traffic, we've made, through these conditions to the resolution, substantial contribution to alleviating that traffic, and also presented a traffic impact study to your planning commission that creating an alternative east-west corridor is very important, not just for our community, but is an integral part of sort of a plan for the borough long-term, which was a part of the plan across this property even 5 and 10 years ago, was to have a road that was an alternative to Bridge Street on this property. So we are implementing that piece in an effort, understanding the pressures of of the traffic in the community. The parking lot is meant to alleviate the parking concern that was raised earlier. And again, that was one of the items that we heard from residents, from Planning Commission, from staff from the beginning, and it's been on the plan because it's an acknowledged concern, and it's something that we believe will be a benefit to the borough. Residents are going to live here because they're excited to walk to town. That is one of the reasons that they will choose to live in this place. Phoenixville is an amazing borough. You and Jean have done just such a tremendous job in that, and the borough should be proud of where they've come. These residents are going to be eager to be supporting the businesses, and really those businesses on Bridge Street are going to thrive even at a whole nother level with additional residents to be able to patronize those.
I don't discount your point. I actually think that there are a lot of pluses to this plan. I didn't call any of them out tonight. You did. There are definitely a lot of pluses to the plan. There's the additional parking lot, the throughway street. I think there are benefits to that. But people already love living in this town, and you're right, building more residential. I'm not opposed to building more residential. I'm opposed to building this much residential, using this space exclusively for residential. The same people that are eager to live here, there are also people who may be eager to work here, and we have to start exploring that.
Seeing no other comments, I guess I'll add my comments in there. I mean, I think this plan has come a long way from its original iteration. I think I was the lone holdout at the vote for the sketch plan. I didn't like that. I acknowledge the fact that this is a lot of residential units. It's a lot of residential units in the middle of our town, which experiences traffic at times. I know because I work in downtown, so I see it firsthand every day. With that said, we have to look at it as well that we have a zoning ordinance that we've adopted. Does this plan fit within that zoning ordinance? Is this a plan that can be built? If it does, where does that leave us? We have to look at why doesn't this fit into the zoning ordinance if that's what we're talking about. Right now, you know, my understanding of our zoning ordinance is that it permits residential development there. It doesn't require industrial or office space. I will say, I work in the office building right next door to Borough Hall, that there was office space available there for years, literally years. I don't know how much of demand there is for office space in Phoenixville. Seeing that, I mean, that is probably the only prime office space in the downtown area other than the bank building, which is wholly owned and wholly occupied by the bank people. So you would think that if that's the only game in town, it wouldn't have sat empty for 6 to 8 years-ish that it did. I think this plan offers a lot. Paradise Street came up. I think this actually goes a long way to help alleviate Paradise Street. It provides another east-west access point for the individuals that live in that area, another way to get out of that neighborhood, because getting out of that neighborhood and getting into the neighborhood is terrible. I've done it. I live not too far from there. I've experienced it firsthand. I think that's one of the positives, actually, that this plan does, is it provides that east-west access. And it's going to, I think, in the long term, require PennDOT to address the road, which they've neglected to do so for the last 8 years. I agree with the sentiment that I would like to have seen a mixed use across the board down there. We still have some holdout. I think the one plan has an approved 30,000 square foot office building. Hopefully someday that gets built. The reality is, I don't know if that's the market for Phoenixville. I really don't. Given my personal experience, giving both as a resident, as a business owner that rents office space, and what I see and what I don't see in the downtown, I don't know how much of a realistic approach it would be to develop office space there, particularly when we are 15 minutes away from King of Prussia, who has a dearth of available office space available, and I don't know how you compete with King of Prussia in the sense of just its location. Maybe we can, and I'm selling ourselves short. I know what I've seen for the last 15 years working downtown. With that said, I mean, I will throw it back out to any other additional comments at this point. We do have a motion on the floor. Ms. Doherty?
I just wanted to say that I'm not suggesting office space. I don't want it to seem like we're suggesting that office space is what we would be looking for. We're talking, people can work at a cafe, people can work at a bookstore, they can work at a bakery. We don't have a bakery. I don't think Dunkin' Donuts counts. So I'm just saying that I agree that traditional offices are kind of going the way of the dodo, but that doesn't mean that that's the only type of usage that, other than a townhouse. Thanks.
Would you like me to? I appreciate the comment, and I've spent a lot of my career building mixed-use communities like this, trying to emulate Phoenixville. And what generally fails on them is trying to put commercial in a place where it doesn't have enough traffic, parking, rooftops to support it. I have built several subsidized cafes, but they don't operate on a long-term basis without having the fundamentals of the business, which you are so fortunate to have on Bridge Street. The other point is that we do have a mixed-use requirement as part of the mixed-use code, and we had, when we originally we had shown some non-residential use on the parcels that are now being offered to the borough, which of course will be mixed use. So it's not quite accurate to say that we just didn't want to build any commercial and we just decided to do all residential. We have heard a need in the borough and have addressed that in that way.
Mr. Ewald?
Just a question for the applicant, since the timeline that we're operating on tonight is currently imposed by the applicant, would you entertain an extension to the next meeting should we need more time to consider this project?
Is there additional information that would be helpful to have that we would not be able to provide tonight? I guess.
Well, maybe I could just weigh in and focus on where we are tonight. According to Mr. Crack, there's no more time remaining to take action on this plan. So if you choose not to grant an extension, and that's certainly your right, Borough Council has to act in one fashion or another. They're either going to vote to approve the resolution with the conditions, or they're going to vote to deny the plan for the reasons set forth in the engineer's letter. And I'm looking at 14 waivers that are being sought that council hasn't granted. So we don't have a clean plan in front of us, and I'm not suggesting we want to get adversarial, but council would have to act if you don't want to grant an extension. So that's kind of where we are tonight, and certainly it's the applicant's choice. If the applicant chooses to extend the time, I would recommend you allow that to happen so you have more time to look at it. That's not saying what you're going to do next month or 2 months from now, but certainly it's showing good faith to continue to work with the applicant to try and address whatever comments you have.
Okay, assuming no other comments from council at this point, applicant, I will ask again, I know it was asked, would you entertain an extension at this point or not?
We've worked so hard. I very much do not want to come off as adversarial. That is not my intent. I would like to know if we were to grant that, what information would be helpful that I could be able to provide in that time that would create value in that time, rather than just delay this conversation until next month.
Sure. I will ask council if they have anything in particular they would like to see from the applicant at this point. Ms. Doherty?
Well, and I apologize if I've missed all of your reasons for the waiver requests, but there are some waiver requests that I don't quite understand why they're needed. Clear sight triangles of less than 75 feet, allowing the removal of trees over 6 inches in caliper. I just want more time to look at this, and I imagine whatever questions we have, we can send on, but there's an awful lot of waiver requests. I don't normally want to grant that many waiver requests, so I would really want to understand why each and every one was sought.
Sure, should we run through them?
Fine by me.
So the first waiver under 3A, and I might call in my engineer. If we
Yeah, and
mention
then, honestly,
that.
the A is not,
Okay.
A is not the big deal. I mean, starting with B.
Yes, the way the plan is designed has that the rear lanes, the alleys, are really designed more like shared drives, and so they are a reverse crown. There's no need for a curb to catch stormwater. If you'll imagine a typical road with a crown that is like a peak in the middle, the water runs to the edge, it's caught by the curb and then runs into an inlet. In this case, it's the reverse. The inlets are in the center of the cartway, and water runs like this. So there's no need for the curb for stormwater. But, you know, we think that the alleys are important for the aesthetics of the homes, and so we would like to still provide those, but without having the curb there.
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So you're saying that it's not the alleys that are the reverse crown, it's the area around the alleys?
No, the alleys are a reverse crown. So the
So they're
alleys,
kind of a dip?
yeah, it's a very minor. It's just enough to get water to flow to it. It's so that the inlets can be in the middle of the cartway, and so
Okay.
it feels more like a drive rather than a curbed street.
Okay.
And that's why we would prefer not to have, and we think it's best to not have curbs. The other piece with the alleys is that largely they would have been a depressed curb anyway because of all the driveways accessing them. If you imagine, Gina, I don't know if you have the plan up. If I could show you the plan, but most of them are, is just depressed anyway. It really would be a lot of concrete for no good reason.
And why do you want going to C, like, why do you want the roads to be, I guess, narrower?
So like I said, this is really in regards to the alleys.
Okay.
And they aren't roads. They're not meant to be serving a lot of traffic. They're meant to serve the homes that are accessing their garages from there. And so they are meant to have tight turn radii. We don't want people traveling at high speed on there where if you have so you narrow down how difficult it is to turn on a corner, it makes people drive more slowly, and it's on purpose.
Understood. And then F, the sight lines.
Sure. Chris, can you give me an example of, this is, again, so you don't have a sight triangle to a driveway, and this is really to treat the alleys in a similar way so that we can reduce, they're like driveways, they're shared driveways, and so to have the same criteria as a street is not appropriate.
All right, so this request, for instance, so this is for alley intersections only, all right.
Correct.
Why do you want to take out trees larger than 6 inches in caliper?
Sure. If you've looked at the site from the High Bridge, you'll see that it looks pretty green, or if you walk along the trail. But it's deceptive because largely underneath that, it's concrete. Those trees have really grown over the last 15 years. They're weed trees. There's nothing of any quality. There's a lot of tree of heaven or ailanthus trees that you might have heard of. That's a hot topic right now because of the spotted lanternfly. And if you walk on the site, you will be just really excited to see all that wildlife. The spotted lanternflies are everywhere. The site needs to be cleared. It needs to be cleared. There's not trees of quality that we would be protecting anyway, but we have to raise the site because of the environmental contamination that's on the site. The remediation to that is a cap to the site, so trees can't be preserved in that case.
Got you. And speaking of the tree of heaven and the spotted lanternfly, how are you going to ensure that, you're disposing of that, or?
Yeah, there's protocol that the, I guess USDA has implemented for the way you dispose of any tree that's located in the quarantine area, which we are. So it won't be able to leave, none of that material will be able to leave the quarantine area, and it'll follow particular procedures for equipment that's used in those areas.
All right.
So our clearing contractor is well versed in that at this point, unfortunately, for all of us.
I'm sure.
Are there any others, or want me to go?
Well, I guess, and then there's just K.
Sure.
Does this relate to the floodplain discussion we had before, or is this something else?
A little bit. The answer to that is that the riparian buffer is not the same as the floodplain. The floodplain is a different thing. The riparian buffer is measured from the top of bank. And there are these few places, for instance, the connection to Main Street, that would be technically within that riparian buffer, but is really required by the alignment of the other roads already in place. That would be required. The trail, of course, we understand that we need the trail in that area, and any improvements to that could be in that riparian buffer. Then the stormwater, that has to do with the way DEP requires that our outfalls from our stormwater structures be handled so that they are properly channeled into the stream in a environmentally responsible way. So of course that involves doing work that then gets repaired in the riparian buffer. And of course we can't build a bridge without getting into the riparian buffer. So those are those pieces there. L and M do have to do with the environmental contamination on the site. And really the DEP is not interested in having infiltration through contaminated soils. And so rather than handle the stormwater through infiltration, will be handled through other water quality measures. So it doesn't go down through the contaminated soil, but it is treated to remove the contaminants from the surface. I just said contaminant twice, but we're talking about different types of contamination. Water that's running off a street is a different kind of dirty than the contaminated soil. And so the pollutants that are in the rainwater runoff need to be removed through this biofiltration process instead of through infiltration.
Thanks. Those are the only direct questions I had right now.
How do I do, Chris? I got the engineers. Your sign off. Okay.
Mr. Kirkner?
Yes, may I ask one more question? Could you talk a little bit more about the remediation process for the brownfields there? I guess specifically, what kind of excavation has to be done on that property before you get to build it up 2 feet?
Right. So the way it's going to work, it's going to be a very careful dance. The material that is on site will not leave the site. We will mostly be filling on top of what is there. Anytime we have to dig for something like a utility trench, for instance, or a stormwater facility. So if you imagine the surface of the ground now, if we have to go below that, that dirt has to go onto another location on the site. On top of any of that, there must be either an impervious cap of 12 inches, so a road or a basement, something like that, or a pervious cap of 12 inches, of 24 inches. So anywhere where there's grass, there will be 2 feet of clean material between the future surface of the ground and the current surface of the ground at a minimum. We do have an approved Act 2 remediation plan to that effect. And again, it's not finalized until the project is complete, because building the project is how it is implemented. There's not really concern in these contaminants of transmission obviously in drinking water, because we'll be drinking public water here. That's no concern at all. The other concern people sometimes have would be vapor intrusion, but the contaminants that we're talking about are not of that variety. So there's no need for vapor barrier for these. They're largely heavy metals, stuff that you would need to eat a couple spoonfuls of dirt every day for a couple of years before you would be able to hit any of the levels that DEP would be concerned about. So it's really about separating people from the contaminants that are down deep in the dirt.
This phase 1 is completed, if you were to get an approval tonight and you were looking to get started on this, what are we looking how many units by what end of time?
I'm sorry, how many what?
For phase 1, how many units by when?
Number this time. It's a total, the first phase of townhomes that we're talking about is technically labeled as phase 2. And it is the piece that is to the east of that central triangle green. And it's a total of 156 homes. And that is broken out as 72 townhomes and 84 stacked townhomes.
And would you say that in those 84 stacked townhomes, that it is quite feasible that families can live there with children?
We haven't seen that families with children have selected those homes in other places like that where this product has been built.
But you would agree that like a single mom might be attracted to a home like that or something like that, or a
It's
dad?
possible, yeah. There's certainly no restriction against a family there, but it just has not been what the market has shown to be the dominant buyer there.
What is the target market?
You know, we think that we have two sides to the market, and our expectation has to do with sort of the split dynamic in our market right now. Millennials, and they're starting to buy houses, and they really love Phoenixville. But also, we've seen a lot of interest from move-down buyers, We've recently surveyed our VIP list, which is pretty long, and it's more than 50% move down. People who are interested in downsizing their yard, they're interested in a townhome that's sort of lock and go. They really like the activity that they have on Bridge Street, and so we are expecting to have a fair mix of those two demographics.
Okay, so based on the end of phase 2, we could potentially see somewhere upwards of, I'm just gonna put a guesstimate here because we're talking about 156 units, so let's just put it at an even 70 potential children maybe?
That's way more than the studies would show that they were, and that our experience would show. It's substantially higher than what we would expect.
And so how many do you expect?
I could get the fiscal impact study out for that to see what the studies show. I mean, anecdotally, the other we are currently selling stacked townhomes in Newtown Square. There's not a single family with kids there. So
We have a few of those here, and families definitely move in there.
I didn't say that there were no families. What I said is what we are seeing right now is that there are not children in the ones that we are selling, and it's complicated.
It's not who you're marketing to.
I'm sorry?
It's not who you think will be marketed
It's
toward.
definitely not who we expect to be our prime demographic by any means now.
What about in the 72 townhomes?
Similar sort of demographics. It's really not much different. You will have more families in those homes, but still not a lot. It's not typically the place where families have selected to live in our experience.
You will have to forgive me, because I look at this plan next to a trail with beautiful parks, and you're telling me that people with children will go, this is not the place for me? I'm having a hard time believing
No,
that.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying many more people without children have been more interested. There are going to be some children here. We have included even amenities with playgrounds in some locations. We do expect some children, but much less than a quarter of units by far, I would estimate. And typically, a lot of times those kids are younger. This could be a starter home for those families, and then they expect to move up to a larger home later on as the children get larger and their things get larger. But that's been our experience in other places.
And have you presented this plan to the school board? I'm just
No.
curious if they have any thoughts on an already packed school district. I'm just curious to see how I'm surprised they didn't send somebody over, quite honestly.
The fiscal impact, the planner who did the fiscal impact study had contact with them and discussed what their particular costs and capacity were. That was included in our fiscal impact study, and the discussion did happen at that point. I have not presented in front of anyone from the school district.
I have a feeling that they would have something to say about the rate of their of size, and I think they would also agree that this is an attractive. Those 72 towns are attractive to families. Maybe they're not stacked as much, but even by your own admission, families will likely move in, could likely move in there. I just think that this is one phase. This is just 150 out of 500 some odd units.
The townhomes are 310 total, including both stacked and traditional, and then it's 240 apartments preliminarily approved. That's right.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions from council at this time? All right.
Mr. President, I do have one more comment, and thank you for indulging me. But, I think back to mixed use and, this parcel and the way it was looked at many years ago, and talking about the brown fields there and the hair on the back of my neck, and it's, I have to have it somewhere. I don't have it on the top of my head, but hair on the back of my neck went up a little bit, talking about, putting a basement above these brownfields, and going back to the idea of mixed use and, not residential so much. That gets back to the point that this is a brownfield, and this has been a brownfield for many years, and I think the original concept looked at that, not this original concept, but many years ago, looked at that, and that's why considered making this more of a commercial, mixed-use kind of thing than, as I said, this is a mixed use somewhat, but for me, it's not enough of a mix, and, I have quite a level of discomfort with putting so many townhouses on top of a brownfield right there. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council at this point? All right. Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor. The motion is I'll remind everybody, it's to approve the plan. So, with that said, and given the nature of it, not hearing anything else, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So I count it as a 3-5 with, okay, we're going with that. So the motion fails.
Mr. President, just so council's aware, that was a vote to adopt a resolution to approve the plan with conditions. So if there's no extension being granted, you still need to take a motion to deny or reject the plan.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'd be happy to extend.
Well, yeah, Mr. President, I make a motion that council deny the plan as it was presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kirkner, second by Ms. Dugan. On that motion,
Maybe this isn't the right place to say it, but, I mean, if another option would be an extension, is it kind of like a deny it or extend it?
yes.
Okay, so personally, I would prefer the extension.
As would I.
Agreed.
So, if you, given the fact that the applicant, and assuming I'm going to put words in her mouth that she would still grant an extension, we could deny the motion to deny and then entertain an extension at that point. And I put my Roberts rules to test with that statement.
Yeah, and could I just help with the motion to deny, just so I think the motion is clear, if I may help?
Yes.
Is that all right? So, again, the motion, as I understand it, is to reject and deny the preliminary final subdivision and land development plan for French Creek West, and the basis for the denial is set forth in the R. Remington Vernick Engineers Letter dated August 5th, 2019, and the review letter by Rayott and Associates dated August 5th, 2019. Reject all the waivers and further authorize the solicitor to provide the applicant notice of the denial. So I think that's the proper motion for a rejection should council want to go in that direction.
So I will ask the motioner if that is acceptable to him as the motion.
Yes, thank you.
The seconder? Definitely. Okay. So that is the motion in front of council at this point. Any comments? Ms. Doherty?
Sorry, another question. So if we deny the motion to deny, is that an approval?
No.
Okay.
Are we still able to entertain an extension if that is how this vote goes?
Correct.
Well, I would suggest before you take a vote on this, the applicant warn and represent that they're offering an extension on the record so we know that the extension is there. Then council can decide if they wish to take action or they wish to allow additional time.
It would be my pleasure to extend to your next meeting.
Which would be October 8th, I believe, right? Okay. So,
To October 8th,
yes.
9th. We'll do it through the 9th. and just give us the-
Okay. So, we have that. We have a motion on the floor. Any comments on the motion at this point?
Just a clarification, a yes vote is to deny the plan and the waivers
Yes,
as sought. Okay.
that is
thank you.
correct. So, the ayes are to deny. What's that?
And it rhymes.
Yes. And it rhymes. Seeing no further comments, on the motion to deny, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
So we have two. All those opposed, nay. We have a 2-6 on that motion, which also fails. Do we have a motion to accept the extension?
So moved.
All right. Motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Mr. Dalton to accept the extension from the applicant to October 8th, 2019, which is the date of our next meeting. Any comments on that motion?
Is this an appropriate time to address the applicant?
I believe she's here, and I'm sure she would accept the question.
I don't want to kick the can down the road either. So I fully expect that, this council and the applicant will work toward coming toward a plan that either can be approved or, well, and come to some kind of agreement.
I would just say that I tend to wear many hats in this community. I know I haven't been around for 20 years, but I do talk to a lot of business owners, I talk to a lot of nonprofits, I talk to a lot of residents, and many people who have fought for the revitalization actually want a bedroom community. And we have a lot, what scares me, scares a lot of you, adding more residential is scary. But when I talk to those people, I also look at our empty storefronts on Bridge Street and Church, and on Main Street and Gay. And if we want that to be a sustainable town center, we need more residents to sustain that. So please think about that. If we're doing these things and developing, we need to do them responsibly, as we have, and our planning commission has worked really hard with the developer to do, and we really need to consider that when we approve these plans.
While we're entertaining this discussion, I would suggest that maybe this also be on the infrastructure committee meeting, so that council could participate there. Maybe the applicant could, and we could have earnest discussions about the plan at that time as well, which gives us a meeting in between the meeting, which is what I'm trying to provide without having another special meeting. Not that I don't mind special meetings, but I try to keep them off the calendar if possible. So, any other comments on this motion? Mr. Kirk?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I get back to the waiver I about granting a waiver to build in a floodplain. I really fear that approving this 10, 15 years from now, we're going to have, there's going to be another flood. I mean, I just read, and, you know, I'm one of these people who kind of trust the science on global warming. I read about a community in Quebec. You know, Canada now is telling people after their community floods, move out. And a community in Quebec has had 2 100-year floods in the past 17 years. So, and we haven't had a 100-year flood here since 1972, and who knows when the next one is coming, but it doesn't seem like it's, with the way the world is going, it's going to be another 100 years. And beside the fact, I still get back to the fact that having a brownfield there, I mean, and I don't think I'd want to move my family onto that site, a site that's a former brownfield. And, you know, we've asked a lot of questions. I don't know what other information we're going to get between now and October 8th. I don't know what's going to change. It seems this has been through a rather exhaustive discussion. But those 2 key facts, building in a floodplain and residential on a brownfield, I can't get past them. And they're going to be out there. Thank you.
Mr. Soto?
I'm going to vote yes to this extension. I mean, obviously, I voted no to deny, but I'm going to vote yes for this extension only because here we are, been at this for a long time. Convince me, 30 days. I mean, that's
Yeah, I think
where we're at.
I think you're exactly right that we've spent a very, very long time with your planning commission, and many of these same concerns have been raised and addressed to their satisfaction such that they made this recommendation. Now, because of the significance of this project, I fully appreciate your interest in making sure that you vet it too, not just rely upon your planning commission. But certainly we can provide all the data that we've provided to your planning commission. I can, I appreciate believing the science, and that's what we've done with understanding how the floodplain will work as we make these changes, and so that the property will no longer be in the floodplain. And so I appreciate all of these concerns. Not wanting to move your family into a brownfield. This will involve a deed restriction. Every person who buys this property will get notice on their deed, traveling with them forever and always, that they understand what they are doing. It's been vetted through the DEP to residential standards. So it's a higher standard than a commercial standard. Like I said, we've gone through, we've addressed these comments for Planning Commission, and I'd be happy to address them for you as well, so that you can have the same comfort that they were able to gain in the 3 years that we spent hanging out together. I certainly can't take 3 years of your time. You don't have time for that for me. And certainly I would be much more anxious to start my project than another 3 years here. But I can provide that these additional pieces of information so that hopefully you can get confidence from what we're proposing.
All right. Seeing no other comments from council at this time, so the motion on the floor is to accept the extension from the applicant, offered from the applicant to October 8th. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion, I'll call it as 6-2. All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well, if nothing else, Mr. Ewald, you were correct. That wouldn't have fit in that 4-minute that I was trying to put it in. All right. Moving on to item C, Regional Planning Committee. Mr. Ewald.
No action to report. Our next meeting will be the end of this month on September 25th at 7:30 at the Schuylkill Township Building.
Thank you. Rec Board, Ms. Dugan.
Okay, on a lighter note, let's see. We've got our current and upcoming programs for the rec department. We've got Fall Hummingbird Soccer, ages 3 to 5. That's Monday, September 9th to October 14th. T-Birds T-Ball, that's 3 to 5. That's baseball for 3 to 5 boys and girls. That goes from September 5th to October 12th. The Little Hoop Stars Fall Program, pre-K and K, and also grades 1 and 2. And that goes from September 7th to October 12th. The preschool PE program for children aged 3 to 5 to be exposed to the fundamental concepts taught in physical education classes. That goes from October 22nd to November 19th at the Civic Center. Badminton for all ages and all levels on Saturday mornings from 10 a.m. to noon at the Civic Center. Co-ed indoor soccer every other Friday night from 7 to 9 at the Civic Center. Pickleball, open play Wednesdays from 6 to 8, and advanced play Saturdays from 9 to 11, and that's at Fisher Park. The Gingerbread House, for ages 3 to 4 at the Civic Center, and they also have an extended day option if that's something you'd be interested in. Finally, the Mr. Cool and Miss Love programs. They're both 7-week programs from October. The Mr. Cool program is Tuesdays, October 8th to November 19th. Miss Love is Thursdays, October 10th to November 21st. And it's a 7-week program designed to give boys and girls in the community a safe and trusted environment to go and share their dreams and ideas. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Beautification Advisory Commission, Mr. Soto.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of quick updates coming out of yesterday's meeting. The Andre Thornton mural box has started in totaling 6 for this season. So there's 6 mural boxes have been completed for the season. A couple are being identified now for the upcoming seasons. Really cool ideas coming out of there, like potentially maybe doing some postcard sets for the holidays or something like that as gifts. A special chairperson's recognition will be sent out to various partners of the Beautification Advisory Commission. This takes a moment to recognize the various non-commission members that we have as our partners that take care of a lot of the various intersections. That's why Nut and Star Street and Gay Street looks so nice. Why the mural up on 113 in Dayton looks so nice. So at this moment, I'd like to take a minute to just recognize Tom and Jean Reese, John Keenan, J.D. Maloney and his Cub Scouts, Lynn Shea, and the residents of Good Samaritan Shelter for doing such amazing work in those projects. This is just another reminder that tistheseasonpxv.com is online and ready. The large, what is it, the deluxe wreaths on Bridge Street are going really fast, so please go ahead and snatch them while you can. If not, you will have to settle for the standard size wreaths along the Mill Street parking lot. We're going to be adorning, I believe, the Main Street and parts of Reeves Park. And lastly, the beautification award nominations are still open until the end of the month. So it is, again, with pleasure, I make a plea to folks who are looking to nominate. We have 3 categories. We added 1 new category last year. So our categories are residential, commercial, and community organization. And just to give you a little bit of insight on last year's winners, for residential category, Bill and Janice Evans at 901 Gay Street were recognized last year. Root Down Brewery and Restaurant at South Main Street for the commercial category, and the Paradise United Church of Christ at South Main Street for the community organization. I think there's a typo on the application that says that nominations were due by June, but they actually are September 31st. So you can find that on the Borough website under the Beautification Advisory Commission section. And that's all the updates I have.
Thank you. Moving on to council action referred from council committees. Back to you, Mr. Soto, for Parks and Rec Committee.
Thank you again. Just one motion coming out of this tonight. I'd like to make a motion to recommend to amend the Halloween Parade temporary community event application and change the route along with a review recommendation from the police department as recommended in committee 2-0.
Motion by Mr. Soto, second by Mr. Dalton. I meant to stop you before you made that because Mr. Crack had said that there was an update with regard to this, and I believe I'll give it to Mr. Crack.
Understood.
Sure. Actually, there was a memorandum right below the application that the applicant has pulled its request for modification, and therefore it's not necessary to make a motion. You can just bypass this particular one tonight. But since there's now a motion on the floor and seconded, you have to take a vote to or table it or don't take.
Mr. President, I would prefer to withdraw the motion at this time.
Motion is withdrawn. Seeing nothing else. Anything else?
One last thing. We did discuss the dog park at the last meeting at Reservoir Park. So we're currently kind of kicking around the ideas in BAC as to, we used to have a group that managed the dog park. That group is no longer in existence. So again, I call for residents interested in getting involved with the Reservoir Dog Park to feel free to contact me.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to policy. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bunch of public hearings possibly coming up for another long meeting. First motion I'd like to make is I'd like to consider recommending the Borough Council schedule and advertise a public hearing to consider an amendment to Chapter 6, Part 3, which is public places, prohibited conduct as recommended in Committee 4-0.
Motion by Mr. Dalton, second by Mr. Soto. On the motion, seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
And for my second motion, I'd like to make a motion to consider recommending the Borough Council schedule and advertise a public hearing to consider an amendment to Chapter 15, which is motor vehicles and traffic, as recommended in Committee 4-0.
Motion by Mr. Dalton, second by Mr. Kirkner. Any comments or questions on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
And for my next motion, I'd like to make a motion to consider recommending Borough Council schedule and advertise a public hearing to consider an amendment to Chapter 23, which is stormwater management, as recommended in Committee 4-0.
Motion by Mr. Dalton, second by Mr. Kirkner. On that motion, any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
And for my last motion, I'd like to make another motion to recommend Borough Council schedule and advertise a public hearing to consider an amendment to Chapter 27, which is zoning, as recommended in committee 4-0.
Motion by Mr. Dalton, second by Mr. Kirkner. One last time, any comments or questions on that motion? Seeing, Mr. Soto.
I'll just address, I think it was a public comment on it before, but this zoning change is an important one to keep the aesthetic of the downtown the way it's meant to be, and it doesn't put essentially parking lots in the middle of our downtown. It puts them in industrial places where they really do belong. And I know that there's been a little bit of talk about that, but I think this is the right decision and support this.
Seeing no other comments, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
And that's it for policy.
Thank you. Ms. Berkeley, anything from police personnel?
No, Mr. President, our next meeting will be Monday, October 7th.
Thank you. Mr. Ewald, Infrastructure, Technology, and Transportation.
Mr. President, coming out of ITT, we have a motion that I'd like to make a motion to consider sending to SEPTA a letter drafted, this is a request by the Railroad Committee, regarding possible train service to the borough, recommended out of Committee 3-0.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ewald, second by Ms. Berkeley. On the motion,
This is a simple 100-word non-binding letter, just continuing our interest in discussions on the idea of rail service.
passenger rail service. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0 with Mr. Soto out of the room. Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Dugan, Finance?
Okay, we got a bunch of these tonight, so I'm going to go 1 through 5. A couple of them we might need to break out. So I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 prepaids dated 7/13/2019 to 8/9/2019 in the amount of $386,358.51. Why does it sound like I'm echoing? And also to approve the 2019 prepaids ACH dated 7/31/2019 in the amount of $3,500.76. To approve the 2019 prepaids credit card statement dated 6/8/2019 to 7/12/2019 in the amount of $61,645.51. To approve the budget increase 2019-018 in the amount of $69,000 from liquid fuels fund balance, 55 to Streets Department for 2019 Ford F-350 with plow, and 14 for the equipment trailer. And finally, to approve the budget increase 2019-019 in the amount of $5,000 from parking fund balance to parking maintenance and repairs to repair the entrance of the Prospect Street lot due to safety concerns.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Kirkner. On the motion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0 with Mr. Ewald out of the room.
Now I'll make a motion to approve the budget transfer 2019-04 in the amount of $22,000 from sanitation fund to solid waste AFSCME wages to temp staffing services for hiring of a temporary employee for park and field maintenance.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Kirkner. On the motion. Seeing no discussion.
Sorry, this one says it was recommended in Committee 3-1. Could someone from the committee let me know what the dissent was?
So, wait, the Prospect Street lot?
No, I believe your concern was that of the fee for the staffing agency, if we hired the individual, is my recollection of the discussion at the committee meeting.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's right. There was something like a $6,000 fee for the agency to, for hiring this individual. And I made the point that when we hired the borough manager in 2008, we only paid the agency $10,000 for him, and now we're paying $6,000 for a laborer. But since then, I've come around.
I'd say we got off very cheap when you guys hired Mr. Crack and spent that $10,000. Yeah. Any other comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
I would have bundled these two if I had known. I will make a motion to approve the budget transfer 2019-05 in the amount of $3,100 from recreation, non-uniform part-time wages to temporary staffing services for hiring of temporary employees.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Kirkner. On that motion, seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
I will also make a motion for council to authorize staff to finalize documents and ordinance changes necessary to affect the borough managing private parking lots.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Ewald. On that motion, any discussion?
Okay, so I was just trying to understand it a little bit. Can you get a little bit of background on that one and trying to understand the
Mr. Crack?
The purpose a little bit?
Sure. We were approached by the owners of Phoenix Village, the owners of 101 Bridge, which is the superintendent's building, and the owners of 99 Bridge, which is the bank building, all of which have separate parking lots. Although under the heading of "We Told You So," they took it upon themselves to manage the parking themselves with a different kind of approach, using the gated mechanisms and what have you. That hasn't worked out so well for them. So recognizing that parking is a premium in the borough and recognizing that we're doing it pretty darn good, they came to us and asked if we would consider that. We brought it, we researched it over quite a long time, actually. I'd say probably 8 months or so. Took a look at it, staffed it up, presented it to committees, both the infrastructure and finance. And the information you have tonight is that both of those committees agree with us that we think we can do it. We think we can do it better. And we just have to work out how we arrange the finances between the two. There's some things that the property owners have to do up front on their dime. And then we will, our intent is to work through the necessary documents in anticipation that we would start sometime the first of the year of 2020.
And just for clarification, we're not approving those documents or the agreements tonight.
Correct.
More giving staff direction that council wants staff to continue in that direction.
Correct.
Any other discussions or questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And I have to abstain, so motion carries 7-0-1.
And finally, I'll make a motion to approve the staff and solicitor recommendation to write off the balance of $6,306 from the AR account regarding Founders Hill stormwater management violations since it was settled in district court.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Ewald. On this motion, any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And again, I need to abstain, so motion carries 7-0-1. Anything else, Ms. Dugan?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will open up the second round of public participation and invite any members of the public who wish to address council to do so at this time. Same as before, please remember to sign in. Please remember to state your name, whether or not you're a borough resident, and keep comments to 5 minutes or less.
Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Chief, Mr. Manager, Mr. Solicitor, and members of council. My name is Paul Verducci, and I am a resident of Fillmore Village and live on Ashburn Road. First of all, thank you, Council, for acknowledging that your constituents' concerns about the Northern Relief Route. However, your statement that the building of a throughway through our neighborhood is not imminent respectfully does not satisfy our concerns. I ask that at the October 8th meeting of Borough Council, someone make a motion that Borough Council end all consideration of the Northern Relief Route, to table the project indefinitely, and to take a formal position against the opening of Ashburn Road across the Schuylkill Trail and through the Moose Lodge property. Further, I would ask that the motion include that Council call for a public meeting prior to accepting any grant money related to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other public participation, we will move on to staff reports. Mr. Manager?
I do want to remind everybody that on the 16th, we have the presentation with the county commissioners regarding the Community Revitalization Program grant that they awarded us for the SOMAX project. I think I got feedback from just about everybody that you could make it or you couldn't for whatever the reasons. It will be interesting, given the location. I look forward to seeing everybody out there.
You might want to wear boots. All right. The rest of the reports are in our packet. Unless anyone has a question, I will be the bearer of bad news. We do need a short executive session this evening, although I don't anticipate coming back. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn into a...
Moved.
To discuss real estate and personnel. Motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Ms. Doherty. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Council is adjourned. Thank you.